Okay, on to the next part. So we have, I'm going to just change my pen color. We have x squared plus 4x plus 6y minus 2 equals 0. And we want to write that in standard form. So right now I see that the x is being squared. So the form that I want it to look like is x minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. All right, so that's my goal, is to get it to look like that. All right, so what we need to do is, see this over here? Complete the square. So we're going to get all of the x's on one side and the y and the constant over to the other side to complete the square. So I'm going to bring that 6y over and that 2 over. So I get x squared. That's a little bit messy. Let's try that again. X squared plus 4x plus blank equals a negative 6y plus 2 plus blank. All right, so we're going to complete the square. We take the middle term, we divide it by 2, and then we square it. So we add 4 to this side, we add 4 to that side. So we get x plus 2 squared equals negative 6y plus 6. All right, so we're really close. We got the left side looking like the left side of the equation. Now the right side, we need to have the y by itself inside the parentheses. So I'm going to need to factor out this negative 6 so that it looks like that equation. So we are going to keep that left side as x plus 2 squared equals, and I'm going to factor out that negative 6 y minus 1. All right, so now the equations match. So I can note that this is going to be a parabola that is opening horizontally. Because it's a negative, it's going to be opening down. Okay, so my vertex is negative 2 comma positive 1. So if I were to sketch this, I go negative 2 comma positive 1, and it's opening down because of that negative. All right, so now the focus is going to equal, so negative 6 is equal to 4p. That means p is going to equal negative 3 over 2, or, run out of the room there, negative 1.5. Okay, so my focus is going to be 1.5 units down from my vertex. So if my vertex is at negative 2 comma positive 1, and I count down 1.5, so 1.5, my focus is going to be right there. So it's going to be negative 2 comma negative 0.5. Now my axis of symmetry goes through the vertex. So my axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative 2. My directrix is 1.5 units away from the vertex in the opposite direction. So 1 and then 0.5. So we're going to be at 2.5. So it creates that perpendicular line. So it's going to be a y equals 2.5. And that is my vertex, focus, axis of symmetry, directrix, and my sketch of the parabola. So the only thing that we have to incorporate now is completing the square with it. All right, let's try another one. So now I'm noticing, for example, number 5, my y is being squared. So for example, I just zoomed way out. Let me zoom back in again. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so it's going to be y minus k squared equals 4px minus h. All right, and the reason why is because it's the y that's being squared this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect all the y's on one side. The x's and the constant go to the other side. There's no constant, so I don't have to worry about it. So it's going to be y squared plus y plus blank equals negative x plus blank to complete the square. So we take that middle number, we divide it by 2, 1/2. We're going to square that, which is 1/4. So if we add 1/4 to this side, we add 1/4 to that side. So it's going to be y plus 1/2 squared equals negative x plus 1/4. All right, so now it's a little bit trickier because we got some fractions involved. So we've got, I'm going to factor out that -1 because the x should be all by itself inside the parentheses. So we've got y plus 1/2 squared equals negative x minus 1/4. So my vertex is 1/4, comma, negative 1/2. If I want to do it as decimals, that's fine. You can do that as decimals as well. You can write it as 0.25, comma, negative 0.5. That's all right. So my focus, let's talk about that now because we're dealing with decimals and such. So 4p, -1 is equal to 4p. So p is going to equal negative 1/4 or negative 0.25. So it's negative 0.25 units away. So because the y is being squared, it's going to be opening horizontally. And because it's negative, it's going to be opening to the left. So we go ahead and we plot our vertex at 1/4, comma, negative 1/2. So 1/4, comma, negative 1/2. All right, and then I know that it's going to open to the left because it's negative p. All right, and now my focus is 0.25 to the left. Well, if it's at 0.25, to move to the left 0.25, it's going to be at 0. So focus is at 0, comma, negative 0.5. I'll keep them in decimal just to make it a little bit easier for adding and subtracting. All right, so now my axis of symmetry cuts through the center. All right, and so it's a horizontal line, so that's going to be y equals, and y is equal to negative 0.5. My directrix is 0.25 in the other direction, so 0.25 away from your vertex. Okay, so my directrix is a vertical line. So that's going to be x equals. And now it's 0.25 away from my focus in the opposite direction. So if we add 0.25, it's going to be, whoop, can't find my screen. There we go. So if I add 0.25, it's going to be 0.5. Okay, so last one of these style. Switching back to my original. We've got x is being squared, so we're back at x minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. By the way, guys, I picked the hardest ones for the examples, like so that we had fractions involved and crazy things like that. So we've got y equals, and then we've got this. So me personally, I don't really want to deal with a fraction and having that negative with the x squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just multiply every single thing by -4. So that way I get -4y equals x squared minus 12x minus 24. Okay, so that becomes a little bit easier than in the process. Okay, so I want to complete the square, so I'm going to bring all of the y's and constants to one side and keep my x's on the other. So we've got x squared minus 12x plus blank equals -4y plus 24 plus blank. All right, so all I did really step above was just add the 24 over, but I just reorganized the sides because I wanted that x squared to be on the left-hand side. So I just added the 24 over. All right, so completing the square, take the middle term, divide it by 2, -12 divided by 2, -6. We're going to square that. So I add 36 to this side, so I add 36 to that side. So this completing the square is going to be x minus 6 squared equals -4y plus 60. So now I want to factor out that -4, so I get x minus 6 squared equals -4y minus 15. So I get my vertex is h comma k, 6 comma 15. Now, because the x is being squared and it's negative, it's opening vertically, but it's negative, so it's opening down. So it's going to be at 6 comma 15. Opening down, that's 15. That's 6. So my focus is going to be, I take -4 and I set that equal to 4p, so p is going to equal -1. So my focus is 1 unit down. So if my vertex is at 6 comma 15, 1 unit down, the focus will be 6 comma 14. My axis of symmetry goes through, whoa, that was a wobbly line. Axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 6. My directrix is going to be 1 unit up from the vertex, and it creates that perpendicular line. So 1 unit up is going to be a horizontal line, y equals, and it's 1 unit up from the vertex, 16. All right, guys, so that was adding a little bit more, but still practicing also those 4, finding those 4 values from the earlier examples, but then you also had to incorporate completing the square. So you guys try the next couple.